We are starting soon.
What is up, Album Book Club? Am I way too loud?
No.
Okay.
Your headphones might be.
That's fair. This week, we are reviewing Phantoms by Marianas Trench.
And this week, we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Joey of Harmless Habit.
What's going on, everybody?
Welcome. Thank you for coming. You suggested this album. What's it mean to you?
This album's one of my all-time favorites. I've always been like a huge fan of concept and like rock operas. So, it holds a special place in my heart for sure. I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome. This is a long episode in the making. I think you suggested this almost a full year ago.
Is that right? Has it been that long already?
It was like March.
You know what?
That's
Yeah,
nuts.
you're right. Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
Yeah.
That's true. This was originally going to go, on the wheel.
I think it still is on the wheel.
The wheel.
I
What does that mean?
don't think we've ever used the wheel.
We have a wonderful prop for when we run out of suggestions, full of suggestions that we have
I
acquired.
love that.
I think that might be the first time it's been on camera, actually.
It's been in the background a lot, but
It
it's
used to
never
be in the
been
background.
shown off like that.
Oh, what a perfect segue into our top three. Joe, you want to kick it off?
With my top three?
Your top three.
So do I start from 3 and then go to 1?
Whichever order.
Okay. So my third favorite is called Glimmer. Glimmer is phenomenal. I think that. So first of all, the concept of the album is basically like this guy whose wife dies and he's living in the house that she died in, and he's constantly like he's being haunted by her ghost, basically. And so like the whole album is just kind of like follows his like descent into insanity because he like still follows his wife's ghost still follows him around. And Glimmer is kind of, it's like right smack dab in the middle of the album, and it's kind of like he's talking about how he like can like still kind of imagine the way that their relationship used to be, and that he can like feel her presence there, and that like it's almost as if the relationship is still real.
Wow.
So that's number 3. Number 2 is the Only the Lonely Survive. So it's the second song on the album after I guess the first song is the first song, Eleonora, is kind of like an intro or what have you. But Only the Lonely Survive is basically just kind of like the dude dealing with like the initial like shock of her death, and like basically the initial like cope of his feelings about it. So that's number 2. And number 1 is The Killing Kind. I'm actually wearing a hoodie that has lyrics of The Killing Kind on it. I think it's a fucking masterpiece. And so like one of the things that Marianas Trench is like really well known for is taking like some of the hook elements from different songs throughout the album and putting it into one big like 8-9 minute long like magnum opus at the end. And that's what The Killing Kind is for this. It basically just kind of like checks all the boxes, going through like not every single song, but multiple of the songs on the album all put into like one masterfully. And so Killing Kind, number one for me.
All right.
Who's up first?
I go first.
Oh,
I pretty much agreed with you. My top three were The Killing Kind, Echoes of You, and I Knew When. But The Killing Kind definitely stood out as a number one.
Yeah, my top three were The Death of Me, Only the Lonely Survive, and Echoes of You.
Wow. My top three was The Killing Kind, Echoes of You, and Only the Lonely Survive.
My top three were Wish You Were Here, The Killing Kind, and Echoes of You.
Pretty good.
Wait, you want to do bottom? Yeah.
Yep.
Mine was Glimmer.
Oh no.
Yeah.
My bottom song is Wish You Were Here.
My bottom song was Don't Miss Me.
My bottom song was also Glimmer.
I bet we can explain it. It's pretty easy to explain why.
I have an explanation.
Joey, what you got?
Oh, for me, it's Your Ghost.
That's valid.
Yep. I understand that.
Something about that intro just like doesn't hit right away, and I'm just like, nah. I feel like it was a throwaway.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you can see that.
All right. Let's start with track one. Does someone want to pronounce this so I just don't butcher it?
Eleonora?
Eleanor.
Is it? Oh, it
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
He sings
I
it a
so
bunch of
would've-
times.
I so would have butchered. Really? I could not get to the lyrics on this one. I was so stuck on the fact that it sounded like The Lion King, and that's why I gave it a
It
5
does.
out of 10.
It does kind of sound like The Lion King. I gave it a 6 out of 10.
I also gave it a 6.
I gave it a 6.5.
I might have to give it like an 8.5. A lot of my scores are going to be high with it.
That's so
But,
that's so fair.
The singers, the way that he layers his harmonies, I'm just a giant sucker for. And so like those a cappella songs where it's just basically like a wall of Josh, the singer, it just pulls at my heartstrings just a little too much.
Yeah, I really like the vocalist on here too. That was really my only note for the song is that I really like the acapella, and I thought it was a pretty decent intro. That's why I gave it a 6.5.
So yeah, I complained about the intro, but it's the right length to be an intro. Sorry, buddy.
I was just going to say that those were exactly the notes I have written down. Cool vocal layering, but it's an intro. we have rules. Intros get like 6s.
Okay, fair enough.
We have rules. The rules that we wrote while the show was going
Rules
on.
that we make up as we go along.
Yeah, they're more conventions at this point. Eventually, they'll be law.
Yeah. Except for the interlude rule. That one's pretty strict.
Yeah, that one
They
is
get
fair.
5s.
And the appropriation of the emoji system
Yep.
is cooled back down.
I wrote actually one of my favorite tracks going back was Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap. And when I turned this on, I immediately was like, oh, yeah, the vocal vibes. And that it's the same thing. It's kind of a harmonized, huge amount of tracks, vocal showcase. So this reminded me of that, and I thought that was really cool enough to actually write it down.
I will say, the feel of this, I stated this downstairs during our dinner, is not meant for little headphones. This is meant for like big speakers. This is a very grand album, and it is meant to be blasted. My little AirPods could not keep up. They left me wanting more. All right, let's move right on to track 2. Only the Lonely Survive. Gave this a 6.5.
Gave it a 7.5.
I gave it a 6.
I gave it an 8.5. Y'all harsh. Jesus.
At 8.2.
Look, I don't hate the band. I found out that I followed the guitar player on TikTok for like an absurdly long time to the point where I'm sure I've gone looking for his band at some point because I was like, yeah, this cool guitar player's got to have a band. And then I'm sure I went looking and was like, and just went back away. But I like the band. This is nothing like what I've heard prior. And I think it really threw me for a loop just because the intro was there. So it was a minute, but this really set in that this is not what I've heard. And it took me a second to kind of get over that, so that hurt the score. This felt very like modern boy band esque, like almost One Direction-y. And I enjoy modern boy bands. I think they're fun, and it's not even a guilty pleasure. I got no shame in admitting it.
My first note here aligns with that so well. Was not expecting One Direction from this album's art or the artist name, but you know, it's here and it's not that bad. I really dug it. I thought the vocal performance was really solid, and the background provided like a nice drive for it to like help hold it up and support it.
Yeah, most of my, or like all of my biggest praises that I give to most of these songs are about the vocal performance throughout. The biggest thing about this song is it sounded like a movie trailer. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
That tracks.
I really appreciated the kick pulse going to keep it.
Yeah,
I feel like
that 4 on the floor.
Yeah, a lot of this album I almost feel like would stall out if it wasn't for how high energy it is, and that was a big plus on this one.
Switcher averages.
What I
going
think
down.
is super cool about like specifically Marianas Trench, but like they do this thing really well that like my guitar player John talks about a lot, which is like music that sounds happy, but the lyrics are fucking like sad as shit, you know. And I feel like Only the Lonely Survive is basically like the epitome of that. It's got that 4 on the floor, freaking dancey beat, but he's literally talking about like how his wife just died.
There's almost an amount of sarcasm to it that's really cool. I always thought.
Yeah.
It's got a fun sass. The whole album's got sass too. It's got spunk. I don't. Can we say that word anymore?
It's spunk allowed.
Is that allowed anymore? No, it's just got energy. I feel like energy is the wrong word because that's just too vague. Because upbeat energy is also just not right because it's more than upbeat.
That's why I said drive. It has a good drive. You know, it pushes you forward, kind of.
It's just so fun, but depressing. It's like drinking.
Speaking of drinking,
Yeah, let's talk about the echoes of you. Give this one a 7 out of 10.
Give this one an 8.
I gave this one a 7.
I gave this one an 8.
And an 8.
Also, did Joey talk about the last one? I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making sure. I did not want to cut a guest off. Fuck these guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, I'll go first. I absolutely loved the Alien synth jams. That's the only way I knew how to write it. I don't know. That was a fun part, and then they changed the piano in the what I guess I'll call the B section. This album has a lot of that. A lot of times when some of the more upbeat stuff typically are shorter song lengths, and this album does a really good job in changing it up enough that it doesn't feel like you're listening to the album for a long time. This was the first time I noticed that.
I have a note about the alien sounds. It's not a negative note. I thought it was for a second because there is a note similar later that is a negative one. But my biggest issue with this song was the keyboard, the like little one-shot keyboards. I just didn't like it. It's used better later, but I just did not like that sound on this song. But I did like this song overall. There's also a goofy alien theremin sounding. So
Yep.
That was fun.
Dude, I'm a sucker for a theremin.
I don't know anybody who isn't a sucker for a theremin. It's such an awesome instrument.
Funny, I've played a few, and the Moog or anything that's got a step in it is actually kind of fun to play. But I bought a cheap analog theremin thinking I'd have fun with it. No, it's one of the most terrifying and useless things I've ever done in my life. So anyone looking down the theremin path, don't do that. Buy something nice.
You should specifically buy a theremin.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking about buying one right now.
It really is a ton of fun, and I didn't pay a lot for mine. But if you get something with steps, it's not terrible. You kind of learn where they sit in the air based on how you have the sensitivity, and it's fun.
Did I send you the video of the Glide, the like Wii remote looking theremin thing?
yeah.
I want to get one of those.
Yeah,
That seems like it's way easier to learn than a theremin.
I've always wanted to. At one point, one of my buddies had a set of Wiimotes that he programmed to be an electronic drum set,
Oh, that's sick.
and used to practice by like doing this, and then like pulling down was the kick. And I was like, I have no idea how you figured that out, but kudos to you.
Damn, to re-rail this train. Much like the song, I took too long to kick in, and I'm the drums in this scenario. It took like 45 to 50 seconds for anything to kick in, and I was just so lost. I didn't know if we were on an interlude or what. And then everything kicked in, and I loved it. It was great. It just took way too long to get there.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Logan. I said the intro was cool, but it was really long. It kind of took me out of it. But the vocals here are obviously amazing. And then the plucked section at the end, like kind of towards the end, I thought that was super cool. I love how we get the different sounds throughout this song. It keeps it really fresh.
Just want you to know that in my notes, I wrote Carson thinks this song is too long at some point during this. So.
Of course.
All right, I will talk about that for a second. It did feel like about the halfway point it was supposed to end, but I wasn't super mad when it kept going.
I just thought the intro was a little too long. Dragged on a little bit.
I finished up my notes at like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. It's like, oh, wait, there's a whole nother one of these left. Oh.
All
I
right.
think we can move on.
Did Joey go?
Did he? Oh, shit.
I heard the theremins were dope out of you. That's all I remember, Jay.
Yeah, no, Echoes of You is one of like it's one of my favorites. It's not like obviously it's not in the top 3 for me, but it's something about that chorus is just like so it drives so much that it like kind of compensates for the like super long intro and the fact that the song probably should have ended before it did.
All right. Takes us right on to our next track. Don't Miss Me? Give it a 7 out of 10.
I give this one a 4 out of 10.
Ooh,
Oh.
Give it a 5.5. I thought I was going to be the bad.
I gave it a 6.5.
I'm right there, 6.5.
Yeah, I can go. So this song reminds me way too much of possibly my least favorite song to ever exist, Earth by Lil Dicky. It has the exact same drum pattern. It has the exact same synths, and I ended up looking it up because it started. The lyrics were lining up in my head. It is the same BPM as that song too, and we've had this on a different episode. It was the Sleep Token episode, another song that sounded exactly like that, and it also got a very low score. I can't deal with it.
You also hate The Greatest Showman? Because I wrote down, this is almost beat for beat in The Greatest Showman.
I wonder if they're all based off some track, like further back. That's really weird, or some sort of common.
Well, the problem with that is the one I'm comparing it to came out a month later.
That's so weird. There's a lot of possibilities and all that stuff, and there's a lot of commonalities that people fall into, but that's a pretty strange statistical anomaly. And B, that you can pick it out, that's pretty impressive. I can go since I was second lowest. This was the point where I started feeling like the tracks were a little generic in order for the vocals to shine, and I don't hate that. The vocals are fine. It just ended up being the wrong kind of like 80s retro vibe for me today. I think that was a lot of it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. The vibe didn't really match up with me either, and especially with the vocalist here being so great, it did fall way more on the generic side of things. It's kind of all I had, Carl. You stole my notes, and I hate you.
There's worse things.
Brutal. That section at the end is like really what makes it for me when like just goes up and hits that like super high it's a little too bouncy like in the beginning with that little like bam 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 like I don't know it's again I kind of agree with I think what you guys said like the tracks are a little bit generic to make room for the vocalist to shine, and I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, that's a really good note that I'm sure we won't come back to at all throughout the rest of this review.
I also did write that the bridge has a really interesting set of chord changes in it that I wasn't expecting. So I'll usually give something a half or something for that. I thought it was really interesting. I didn't expect to hear the chord changes I did.
You know what? I will say something positive about this song. I think it's actually a nice kind of pullback from the last song, because the last song was a lot, and this is like kind of the break you get before going into the super generic stuff.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I think this was when I bought into the album. I was like, this is a concept album. I'm watching like a theater show of this happening. I'm sitting and just enjoying it. And I mean, most of my notes after that did kind of turn into how much am I enjoying like the atmosphere of everything and the performance of it, and less about the actual
I'm literally laughing.
substance to it.
I'm laughing because Logan liked the song that had the 80s vibe. We just have this hilarious cliche that keeps rolling.
What?
He's such an old
Sue
head.
me. I like the 80s, man.
You weren't even there.
Prove it. All right. Ready to move on?
Mhm.
To Wish You Were Here. I gave this an 8 out of 10.
Give this one a 6.5 out of 10.
I give this one a 6 out of 10.
I gave this one a 6 out of 10.
7.8.
Damn. How did I top out on this one?
This is the song I had the note where it kind of sounds like they watered down the sound that they already had and then made the entire identity of the band the vocalist. Like, he's the only thing that's here. The background is so washed out, and it just leads to this one feeling like the most generic song we've heard so far.
But it had gospel claps.
Again,
I'm telling you, that's what won the whole thing for me. Like, I agree with everything you said, except I gave it a higher score because it had gospel claps.
I thought we both gave it a 6.
Oh well, I guess I was on a lower plane than you to start.
I thought you were being sarcastic when you
tracks.
said that.
No, I actually
Wish
really.
You Were Here gave me like 2012 Owl City vibes.
Yeah.
Like with the na-nas and the production, like with the I don't know, like mainstream kind of like trying to be like top 40 kind of vibe.
Definitely
know,
a
like the-
song that feels like it was made for really heavy radio play.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's fun.
I don't think it got really heavy radio play.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I was trying to remember which ones had videos. This wasn't one of them. It was two of them
I
at the
didn't.
beginning.
I
and-
meant to look at one point, but then I never got around to it.
There was only one video. I think two of them were lyric videos too. I was trying to remember,
Oh.
but this wasn't one of them because obviously some of them had some push.
Mhm. Yeah, this one, my main note was that this sounded like another song I've heard that I cannot place to save my life. Sounds familiar, and this also might be thumbs up. I don't think it was, but it has the note that it could have been.
I got really close actually too.
Yep.
Call me a crack smoker. There was like a 50s vibe going on at one point, but it was purely in like one part. It was like the guitar only, and then the background was all electronic. So I put that it had 2050s energy. The rest of my notes here are staggeringly negative. The intro had a fun energy. Layer building is fun. This is dragging on. Oh, a change. Fun. Period. Ending is fun. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Sounds like you had fun.
I had fun. Yeah.
I think it's funny that we all described that section as something completely different, but all liked it. That's the funny thing to me.
All right. I think that takes us on to track 6, Your Ghost. I give this one a 6.66.
Give this one a 6.
I also gave it 6.
I gave it a 7.5.
You ruined it.
I'm going from the top to the bottom here, boys. This is getting a 5.
I guess I have to go on the defense and say that I liked this one, especially after
Sounds like it.
the last one kind of left me on the doorstep. I didn't really like the last one, so it definitely boosted this one's score. It put me back into the album. I thought this one was catchier than some of the other songs that we've heard. And I really liked how they were kind of building back towards the more epic stuff in the album. You know how the last song felt really stripped back of all that flavor, I guess.
This is the part of the listening process where I completely run out of things to say, so I start writing things about other things. Where I'm like, "Yeah, this album has a lot more pop than the rest of their albums." Thanks Lamont for having us listen to that before we got here. But also, this one commits a sin that I see in a lot of music that doesn't need this. Is it has a trap beat, and that immediately loses points on any song that it doesn't belong on.
Preach.
I wrote that I liked the halftime groove, so I liked the trap beat in this one. But I guess
No.
it was just so like electronic anyway. I was kind of like, oh, this is different. Okay. I don't know.
Nah.
Yeah, I wrote this belonged in the Lego movie. End of statement.
Yeah, no, the intro is just a little bit like, eh, for me. I think that again, like his voice carries it, but that this one's just straight up not for me. It's I hate to say because I would love to say that this is one of those albums where I don't skip any tracks, but this is the one that every time it comes on, I'm like, nah, next.
Yeah, and I can definitely say that at this point in the album, I started feeling kind of the, I won't say the burn, but kind of the monotony of the album. And I know the songs were changing lyrically. It's just the tracks themselves kind of had the same energy for the next song too. Kind of does even. So the whole middle of the album, even though it's not long, kind of drags on. So I don't blame you for pulling a skip in here at all. I mean, this would be where I would find it in one of these last two probably.
I actually think I had the best point because I think I had to take a break for some work stuff right here, and I think that was the best time I could have possibly taken a break. So I didn't have the burnout that I probably would.
You know what? I also took a break right at 5. Right after 5, I took a break, so that definitely helped out this one's score.
Nah, I took this album while being in my angriest I think I've been in 7
Oh,
months.
no.
So I was ready for it. I was in, man. I was grooving. Speaking of grooving, let's talk about Glimmering with track 7, Glimmer, which I gave a 6 out of 10.
Gave it a 7.
I gave it a 5.5.
I gave it a 7.
Here, I'll get this out of the way.
8.5.
Oh shit! You said 8.5.
Hey Logan, we do
No.
numbers first.
Yeah, no, I wanted to get that before Joey said his because I was really expecting like a 10, but an 8.5 is better.
Well, so there's 110 on this list,
Oh, thank God.
in my opinion. But with Glimmer, like the lyrics are so passionate that like the lyrics in the chorus, like throw my head back, my heart under attack, like it's just so passionate. You can just kind of like I think feel the emotion that he's feeling, and it just kind of like really does it for me in this one.
Yeah, I like my main note is that I like this one better than the last two, and that's going to justify its score. But you said it better than I probably could. Vocally, in this whole album, he's killing it.
Yep. Mine is also very easy. That's it.
So, I don't know. This one definitely suffered for me on placement. You know, I talked about it just a second ago. This was the 4th one in a row, and I was kind of already burned out of the sound. And then on this one, it slowed down, which is always a negative for me. I always want more faster now. And then I wrote probably I didn't mean it as mean as it sounds, but I said the band sounds like LaCroix because it's like the band is playing in the room next door at some point. You know, I'm like, and I literally wrote, "Has anyone seen the rest of the band?" His vocals are awesome, but at some points I wonder if there were 4 guys in this recording process. Like that's
Dude, probably not.
yeah, yeah. That's the only way it could have worked.
This was definitely one dude.
Yeah.
Something tells me that Marianas Trench, at least at one point, probably during the recording of this album, was probably the bare tooth of pop rock. Because you know how like Caleb Shomo does and plays basically everything in bare tooth? Yeah, I think Josh is that guy in this band.
Yeah, he definitely shines.
I don't know. We
He
actually
glimmers, you could say.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's better word for it.
we actually talked about that earlier at work. We were talking about how a lot of, I guess, older people are used to a band that stays together and records together, and most of the '80s bands at least were that way. And now it's actually very common for 1 or 2 members of the band to record the album while the band is off doing. The other 2 members of the band are off doing something else, but they'll come back for the tour. So they'll either bring people in or do whatever they need to. It's just a really weird thing to kind of explain, and then you start thinking about Brian Wilson and kind of replacing the Beach Boys so they could become the touring band, and that's more common than you'd think, even if there
Definitely.
How you guys do it, Joe? You guys like a Jacob actually
What'd you
does
say?
everything, and then you just go sing, and everyone else fills in for cakes.
No, it's kind of a group effort with us. We do it the more traditional way in terms of like the actual. I mean, like the actual writing is basically like me, John, and Max like me and the two guitar players. And then like we'll have every band member like throw their own flair on it in terms of like the arrangement, like the bass parts, the drum parts, the actual arrangement of the song. Everybody will kind of give their 2 cents. We do it a little bit more traditional than I feel like a lot of people are doing it now. But
I don't know. That's just always been interesting to me because I was reading on a band today that they were like, yeah, the drummer wanted to go to college, so he hired a studio musician so that he could get a semester in while they were working on the album, and then he went back on the next tour.
That's how I feel like with Paramore. Their one drummer's like, yeah, guys, I got to stop for a while. And he just came back.
Well, but that was like years. This was literally it was just in between 2 tours. Like what a weird, like they recorded an album in between 2 tours, and the drummer just left for that brief period and then came back. It is what it is.
Man. All right, are you guys ready to talk about track 8? I Knew You When. Give this a 6.89.
Give this one a 6.
Give this one a 7.
I give this one an 8.
and a 7.1.
Valid score. Yeah, intro was fun. Was all about everything until it got to like the trap stuff. And then I was just checked out, and then it got back out of the trap stuff, and I was right back into it.
I think I just learned I like trap music. This was really interesting. I literally said, thank goodness the energy was back. I needed it. Felt like a breath of fresh air. So I must like trap music. That's really interesting.
I didn't mind the trap stuff either. I actually kind of dug it, and I really liked the vocal effects in this one. I thought they were done really well. It sounded really neat.
I said vocally, I like it. Love the vocals. Don't really love the backing track.
I feel like this. Somebody said it, or somebody said that one of the songs earlier like belongs in like the Lego Movie. I think this belongs at the ending credits of like a rom-com.
That's so valid.
That's so true.
It ends with us. Should it go there? Get tossed in the middle of a lawsuit right now. I forgot. You guys don't know rom-coms.
No. I still read them in novel form, actually.
Oh, Fabio on the cover?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can I get a rom-com book but with Carl on the cover?
That's horrifying.
I'd pay good money for that. We can make that
I
happen.
was say you're the art guy.
You know what? I can make that. Yeah.
That's not a me edit it later. That's a you do it later.
As long as it's a choose your own adventure, I'm down.
Okay. Connor, get to writing.
I'm just gonna put it in Chat GPT. I don't care.
It'd be better than what we actually wrote anyway.
Actually, no. We'll just have Zach do it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
God, we're broken. All right. Let's talk about track 9, The Death of Me. Give it a 7 out of 10.
I give this one a 7.25.
I gave this one a 6.
This may be controversial. I give this one a 9.
All right.
I'm right up there with you. 8.8.
This one was fucking awesome, guys. Don't look at me like that.
It was.
I was so focused on having a good time with it after I turned it on because I don't know what about this one really made me just focus on the music that I was entirely juked out by that false ending. I thought the song had entirely ended and we were on to the next track, and then I got freaked when all the ghost shit started to happen. I thought it was so fucking cool.
All right, with this one, a clean transition from the last song into this one. I really liked the vocoder that they used. I did not care for the chorus. Everything else in this song is awesome, and I love the outro. It scared the shit out of me, and that's always going to get points.
Mm-hmm.
But I just did not care for the chorus.
That's valid.
Yeah, I said this song had the most hook and the least amount of words. So it was just, it really got you. And then, like you said, the chorus just left you one. It really was just like one line.
I feel like it was interesting, and they went back to some of the ones that we've called more generic just for the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
This is a hot take. I think I would have preferred the last minute of the song as an album-only intro to the next song. I didn't enjoy
I
the
will
way
say
it...
the crazy symphonic, like epic ending. I thought it was really cool and it hit for me, but I can definitely see it being needed to be like cut.
Yeah, yeah. It could be its own piece, something. And it wasn't that I hated it. It was just that I was like, man, this was really different. And there's certain
I feel
times.
like.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead with that.
Oh no, I feel like in a world where the singer and writer isn't an absolute monster, that would have been the last song of the album with that long outro, but the because he's such an absolute just genius in my opinion, like The Killing Kind exists, and yeah. If this were like anybody else had written this album, that would have been the last song, and I feel like it would have been an appropriate ending.
Well, I mean, also another way to look at it is kind of like this is a very cinematic album, and this is the ending, and the next one's the post-credit scene, because it is kind of a vibe switch to me. It's not exactly going with the rest of it, but it is with the vibe of just the ending of this song.
I will say, in my mind, this is kind of the ending, and that's how I've kind of separated it out so that the flow of the album isn't affected nearly as bad. But I do think this should be like kind of the ending.
So we can either talk about it now or talk about it later. I mean, if this is supposed to be a rock opera, a lot of stuff like that will have almost a second false ending. A lot of musicals and stuff will do that. The story will basically wrap up, and then it'll all come back out for one big kapow at the end, so you don't leave sad. That's a pretty common thing, and if that's what this is supposed to be, I totally get it.
100%. Yeah, The Killing Kind is basically a reprise, right? So you
Right.
have the whole album from start to finish telling the story, and then it just touches on the little pieces as you go through, telling the whole story basically again.
The other Trench album we did had that too, right?
I think so.
I'm pretty
Masterpiece
sure.
Theater, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a common thing, I guess, with them.
Wanna
And
be
then
honest,
guess
I
what?
don't
On
remember that one.
Haven, they do it again.
Oh yeah, we reviewed Haven.
We didn't review it. We listened to it.
Oh, that's what it was.
We note reviewed it. It never
We didn't
made
get
it
that
to
far.
video.
Oh,
We tried. My computer exploded.
Yeah, that was an uneventful. Well, actually, it was an eventful night. We did some planning, and that's what led to this night, and us talking about track 10, "The Killing Kind," which I gave a 7.5.
Gave this one an 8.5.
8.5.
yeah, 8.5.
10.
I see that.
That's
Yep,
fair.
I get it. Yep.
I think once I deemed this song Edgar Allan Poe the musical, it was over. It was really, really fun until it turned into Imagine Dragons, and then it really wasn't fun because then I was like a 16-year-old child, and I was not vibing with that.
I did lose the plot of this song about 4 minutes in. I was like, what's going on? I need to lock in and just fucking listen to this thing. I thought I was kind of upset that the last song wasn't the ending because I didn't know what was going on yet. I didn't realize it was the full like reprise of the whole thing, and I thought it was actually pretty cool. You know, that's how I was able to kind of separate out the last one being like the ending but not the ending. And then the "it" reference going into this like insane symphonic buildup is crazy work. I don't know how you do that.
When that happened, it just reminded me of the Ice Nine Kills review, just because that also ended with an "it" reference, and then the whole thing. The only thing I could think of for the rest of the song was our like wide camera for that episode.
You forget the feeling that it's all connected.
I think it is.
They all work for the lizard government. Joey, do you work for the lizard government?
I will not confirm or deny that.
We got his ass.
We're on to it.
Speaking of like analog horror, horror is like what I got the vibe of this, and I loved it on this one. I don't know. I guess when Ice Nine Kills does it for a whole album, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of okay. But when it's one track, I'm like, oh, that's cool. It just had all my favorite parts of the whole rest of the album, and the build was killer. I mean, if you're gonna listen to one track off this album, or even Marianas Trench in general, this is probably a good one to grab. I was pretty impressed.
It takes a super talented artist to be able to take the best parts from the best songs of an album and put them over completely different instrumentation and have them like hit even harder than they did the first time around, and be like arguably catchier. You know what I'm saying?
But I also don't know if I hadn't listened to the album that I'd appreciate it. That's the other thing I thought was very interesting. Like this would literally never get airplay, other than maybe classic rock radio, but that's not where it would belong. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a really funny thing because you know if it's super ADHD almost if you weren't prepared for it. But since you've listened to the whole album, this creates this really cool finale that wouldn't exist any other way. You know, we talk pretty often about how the album tends to ruin songs based on placement. This one could literally not exist without the album in front of it, I don't think.
So funny enough, when I first, so John, my guitar player, showed me this album, but he played I'll never forget. It was when the album came out in 2019. He does this thing every time Marianas Trench puts out a new album. He just goes to the last song and listens to that first because they always do this, right? And so he likes to like just hear the big, you know, anthemic whatever song that they have at the end first. And I just fell in love with this song first, period. I didn't even listen to the rest of the album fully for like a year. Like I just said, oh, I like The Killing Kind. I'm not even going to give anything else the time of day. But you're totally right. Like once you have context and you can recognize like those themes that are inside The Killing Kind that came from earlier in the album, it does change your perspective of it, and it makes you kind of like appreciate it a little bit more. Way more, actually.
It's really funny you said that because I was thinking about it as you were talking. This would almost work as like an overture. If you thought of this like in an opera or something, if there's an overture at the beginning that gives you snippets almost like a preview of what you're about to see to kind of figure out what each piece is going to be. But I honestly just feel like we all have too short of attention spans for something like that to work on an album now.
See, I've always loved overtures. I mean, I love film, and it was something that kind of was in there for a while in the 50s and 60s, and then they just stopped caring about it. But when you look at films those eras and just sitting there for, 10, 15 minutes listening to snippets of the score is like one of my favorite things to do. So when you have albums that incorporate it, I think they just hit on such a good mark. It's just maybe some of the songs on this album were a little too generic, and thus you had to throw sections of very generic in there, so they just took up whole sections of a song, and it related less in my brain of like, oh, this is from X, Y, and Z. It's more, oh, this is one big section.
It makes you wonder, like, since they do this every time, maybe there are some songs that are made purely for a section in the overture.
Oh, so you think it's like a novel, like it's the ending is being changed as it's being written kind of situation?
Yeah, it could be that one of those songs that felt really generic, they're like, we just need this snippet made into an entire song.
And I didn't think about that because the album literally couldn't go any way that would be out of order of what this end song is, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it's going to get the score it's going to get next, is because of that. I mean, it all makes sense.
Let's go right on to that and talk about pacing.
I should probably hit that button, man.
I gave pacing, it's on my notes it's a 7, but I'm going to change it to like an 8.5.
Yep, I gave it an 8.
I'm going to give it a 9.
I give it an 8.5.
I'll go 8.5 as well.
Yeah, I just talked about it. I literally don't think, I don't think this could exist any other way unless you shuffled the end track up. I think it just needs to be the way it is. And this is one of those albums that the track layout benefited all of the songs. It really did.
Yeah,
that's huge.
I completely agree with you. At first, when I listened to this, I thought a couple things could be swapped around, and then I got to that ending piece, and it tied everything together in a really cool way. And it just, you gotta give them props. That's hard to do.
Yeah, no, we've been talking about, we kind of jumped the gun on pacing, but yeah. I will say though, the Earth song was not in that last song, so they can just cut that if they want to.
Nice.
Yeah, call me a sucker, but I really wish this would have ended with like a spoken word minute something.
I would have gotten a 5 from everybody on these couches.
Nah, I would have loved it. I think this is just one that there's a lot of emotion that kind of got trapped behind the music, that if you could have just let it all out in one like kind of final end thing, it would have played a lot better. And also, this is kind of short. I was wanting one, maybe two more, and it's just because, I don't know.
Hit him with that MF Doom spoken word comic book,
like-
overall type shit.
If I had that as the ending, it'd be cool. Or like two more songs to just kind of ride me out to the hour and be like, yep, that's
Dude.
a nice wrap on that.
I actually disagree with you completely. I think it's the perfect length, and it may just be for me because I think like this is roughly the limit of what I could take of this style of music. And I'm not saying I don't like Marianas Trench. I'm just saying like very vocal led music. Being a drummer, that loses me pretty quickly. It's serious. I tried really hard on this one, and I really enjoyed parts of it, but I could definitely feel that throughout the album. So I feel like if it was any longer, it would have gone down in score.
Fair.
I kind of agree, and like, what's interesting is so this album in its entirety is 40 minutes long, which is like pretty standard for an album. But it's just the fact that it's only 10 songs. Like some of them are like way longer than the industry standard of like 2.5 to 3 minutes. Like shit, Killing Kind is like 8 minutes long. So I think that like it's kind of crazy that they were able to take like basically what the time frame of the traditional album, which is 40 to 45 minutes, and condense it into 10 songs.
Heck yeah. All right. I think that takes us to album art, which I gave an 8 out of 10.
I also gave it an 8 out of 10.
You give it a 7.
I also gave it a 7.
9.
Okay. Let me list my problem with this album art real quick. The combination of the name, the album art, and the artist name leads you to a very misleading combination of things, at least in my opinion. I feel like if you looked at this album on a shelf, you'd be like, that's like a hard rock or like
Right.
metal album.
Yeah, that's my whole thing. I 100% expected down-tuned guitars, and that's not a knock at anybody. It's just that's what I expect.
I just feel like it's cool art, and that's why I gave it a 7. Like, it's really well made, but it just doesn't quite fit.
That's pretty fair.
I think I agree with you until you get to the story of the album, in which it is exactly perfect.
The story-wise, yeah, it is.
So,
Yeah, but-
genre-wise, yeah, if you're going in like blind buying it, true. But I think once you've got to the stage where we are, I think this is almost a perfect album art for it. But it lost some points because, yeah, when you stare at it, this don't scream like vocal pop rock.
I was gonna say, we talk about it most weeks of like if I saw this on a shelf, and if we did see it on a shelf not knowing it, that couch is 100% right. But because of this episode, we don't have to do that. So
I think knowing knowing the story, I definitely like it more. I just I don't know. Some weeks I go in and I really research the album, and this week I didn't. I knew it was a concept album, but I didn't dig in any to understand that yet at this point.
So again, with the concept of context, right? So like I said, like the first song that I listened to on this album was The Killing Kind, and The Killing Kind is like so like rock opera that like if you look at that, like if you like listen to that song and then look at the cover, yeah, you're gonna think that the rest of the album is gonna be like that, right? But then you listen to the whole album all the way through, and you're like, this is pop. This is like a pop rock opera, right? But like it's way more poppy, way more synths, way more like pop rooted than you would expect based on the album art. But to the contrary, that woman is the focal point of literally every song, so I think it's super appropriate.
I just think I was waiting for like distorted guitars the entire album. I kept thinking it was going to be a half a track where the band was going to build in or something. I expected it the whole time, and it was just weird.
It did.
Yeah.
It does look vaguely like a PS1 horror game cover. So I'm all about it, but
It's either that or like an old Disturbed cover.
I was thinking, yeah, like Corn. And this would go sick with some Corn.
Good pull.
Heck yeah! All right, you guys ready to talk overall?
Sure.
All right, I gave this album a 7.5 overall.
also gave it a 7.5 overall.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5.
I gave it an 8 overall.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5 overall.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think the thing about this album is the more we've talked about it too, the more I can appreciate it now. Just even thinking from the start of this conversation to the end, I'm going to check this album out again. So that's a pro side. There was not much I found myself like ever groaning about. It was, I mean, maybe wanting more, but wanting more and then being satisfied with what you have that's just life. So
Trying to figure out where you're going with this.
it's just I enjoyed it, and what was there was great. There are things on my wish list that will never happen, and that's tragic. But
No,
I
boys,
enjoyed
let 'em
what I
crash
got.
and burn. Let them crash and burn.
No, hold on. We make the track.
if we
Your
make
little-
a,
your
we could
little
just make a
spoken word,
spoken
yeah.
word track. That's not hard.
Yeah, no, overall, I mean, I like this album. I will go back to it. Carl's losing it.
No, I'm just laughing at you guys. It's hilarious.
We are hilarious. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah. No,
That's the point. That's why we're live.
no, I don't think so. Not me.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely come back to this. The crazy part that I saw after the fact, I went and read a couple reviews. The like spread of scores that it got. I think the highest I saw was like an 8.6 out of 10, and the lowest I saw was a 1.5 out of 5,
Good lord.
which is
That's a 3.
yeah, that's wild.
I'm not gonna get my calculator out. That doesn't sound like a 3, but you might be right.
1.5 out of 5.
Yeah, no, that's a 3.
times
That is a
3.
3.
That's
You're right. Dude.
I feel like I could see, like if this kind of like, if you go into it blind and you listen to this and you're like not familiar with rock operas, like this could totally like just be somebody's like Little Dicky
yeah.
for you.
That
You
was just
know?
once, I swear.
But yeah, I can totally see like somebody just listening to this and being like, "This is not my cup of tea." You know, especially you gotta be emotionally invested for it to have the most impact.
While you're talking about it, I want to mention I think this is a slow burn. Like I think this is definitely one that second time I listen to it, it's going to be higher. Third time I listen to it, it's going to be higher. And this is not one that your first listen is like, oh man, this is the greatest album ever. I think for most people probably.
I completely agree because I feel like the more you get, the better it's going to be. Like
Yep.
the more the story, the more as you listen to it more, the story's going to get more cohesive. It's going to feel better as you listen to it. You're going to be more familiar with it.
Yeah,
And of course, like that grandiose ending is going to feel even better.
it's got layers like Shrek.
Like an onion.
Yeah.
Like an onion. Dude, I mean, that's super valid. Those are super valid points. Like, the first time I listened to this album, I hated Echoes of You. I was like, this is like super poppy. Like, what is this? And then the more and more you like listen to it and get invested in the story, and like it really does like sink its hooks into you after like a long period of time. Whereas like the initial shock from the music not being like what you would necessarily expect can be off-putting.
I need to watch it live. I don't know if he sings the same live, but this is one of those things that I was like, man, if there was a band, like if there was an actual band at any point, if they just showed up a couple times, I feel like this would be a lot higher on the list. And I know some of their other stuff has more stuff underneath the vocals.
Yeah, I feel like everything we've heard before this was all minus the reviewing Haven was like almost punk, or not punk rock, but
Pop punk.
pop punk. Yeah,
Well, and I definitely lean on the instrumental side. So if anything, you know, I don't want an Oreo Slim. I want a double stuff Oreo. I want that band in there really big. So
I
it's
love
just
big band music.
well, no, it's just my taste. So you know, other people probably disagree. But
All right. Does everybody know what time it is? Because I know what time it is.
Yep.
Oh, I told him.
I know
I
what
told
time
him what he was.
It's our
prepared for.
favorite time of the show. It's time for the plug yo shit segment, Joey. So go ahead and plug yo shit, sir.
So my name is Joey, and I sing for a band called Harmless Habit out of Columbus, Ohio. And let's see, we just dropped a new song called Traffic, which, boys, thank you very much for plugging on your page. I really appreciated that. Saw that on the day it came out. That's very kind of you. How'd you like it, by the way?
loved it. Did you
Mhm.
guys play that when we saw you last? Because I thought you
100%
did.
we did.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
like
So-
99% sure, and then some of the other guys were like, "Did they?" And I was like, "I don't know. My memory's foggy of everything that happened that weekend. It was a blur."
My memory's
So
quite
fun
foggy, too.
fact. Fun fact about Traffic is that is Traffic 2.0. Like it has been released before.
Oh.
But so Traffic was actually one of the first songs we ever wrote as a band, and we recorded it. It was on our first EP, the Underclass EP, and it got pulled from Spotify and like all the like online platforms because we let our license expire. And so it hasn't been available on Spotify or Apple Music or anywhere for the last like 6 or 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And so what we decided to do, I mean, since we still play that song live, it still fucking goes hard live. We were like, let's just re-record it. And so we did and made it like, brought it into now.
I actually really love that stuff. I don't know if I've showed you guys this before. Chicago re-recorded 25 or 6 to 4 in the 80s and re-released
Yes,
it.
they did.
And it's one of my favorite tracks of like theirs because it's like the blend of what they were doing at that point and what they used to do. And it's a really interesting piece. So I generally love when bands do that, when they take a little while and go back to something. So it's cool.
Hell yeah. Dude, love Chicago, by the way. Phenomenal band. I got to see them
Yeah.
live like 2 years
yeah.
ago. Holy shit, they're amazing. Still.
I believe
Those dudes are like pushing 80 and still like have the embouchure and the breath to play horns and sing their hearts out. It's crazy.
I'm always amazed at what bands actually still have enough original members that I'll still consider them a band. And Chicago is one of those. And then, like, if you think about bands that sound like them, if you think about Blood, Sweat, and Tears, there's literally no original members in that band. The bass player leases the name to a completely different band that at this point, no one in the band has ever played with any original members of the band, other than the bass player that owns the name. So it's literally one band removed from the entirety of the original band, but they're still touring as Blood, Sweat, and Tears and still playing the same charts.
I can almost promise you that Chicago is going to probably end up being the same thing. Like, because at this point, like, I think there's like 2 or 3 original members left. Like, they've had like 3 or 4 singers, but because one of the original members, fun fact about Chicago, like, will not play their songs in adjusted keys. Like, he will only play them live in the original keys. And so if like Jason Sheff is a great example. He's one of I think he was the second singer like through the like late 80s and the 90s. And he left in like the 2000s, like early 2000s, because he couldn't sing them in the original key anymore. So one of the members was like, all right, we're getting a new singer, but I think pretty soon they're all going to die. But the band should, I mean, it's just gonna happen. Those boys are old, but I think the band itself is still going to continue to tour under the name Chicago somehow with just a completely like original memberless lineup.
Chicago's gonna be like Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's just gonna be a legacy that goes on and on and on
Yeah.
and on forever and ever and ever.
It's not always a bad thing. One of the best drummers of all times is now in the Rolling Stones. I mean, and the bass player in the Rolling Stones is also no slouch. So, the whole rhythm section of that band is completely different, but the guys they replaced them with are phenomenal. So sometimes that happens. It's probably going to happen with Chicago. They're probably going to get awesome guys in to do it. So, should be cool.
I would be so excited in like 20 years for another Chicago album to come out.
That'd be awesome.
It's a huge tangent. We went on about Chicago, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Anything else left to plug?
Yeah. Next time we're playing is in 15 days, friggin' February 15th at Scully's. We're playing with our boys in a band called Flicker Fade. They're an emo tribute band. They're all super great dudes. They kill what they do, and it's just us two performing at Scully's. Gonna be a hell of a good time. So come on out to Scully's in Columbus and rock out with your boys.
Hell yeah.
Am I up?
Yep, you're up.
All right. Next week, we will be reviewing The Pressure Point by Ollie Ride, I think is how you say that. It's spelled really weird.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying it.
It drops next week on Friday, so...
Oh, another speed review.
You can
No,
listen with us.
Well, I mean, there's 5 songs out already, which
Oh, then it'll be fine.
out of 12 is...
So I need to
Good.
start at like 11:30 on Thursday, and then by the time I get halfway,
Yeah.
I can get the new part go.
This was suggested by one of our viewers on YouTube, who has said before to remain anonymous, so...
Hold you to it. All right, y'all. See you next week.
Guys, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right.